The Commission is aware of the difficulties in Europe's economy because of the coronavirus, and that's why we're taking decisions as quickly as possible. It's the same for all member states. We don't differentiate there. We've already said that targeted, proportionate rules and regulations that allows member states to aid, to help companies, at the same time trying to avoid any distortion of the single market. Being able to give aid temporarily, i.e. state aid, here we have cross-cutting rules which are applicable to all member states. And it also gives chance to member states that don't necessarily have flexibility to guarantee economic support across the board that would come under state aid. Especially for those companies that don't necessarily need any aid in this crisis. Eric has already said that this is a temporary framework, the state aid framework. This is one of the solutions the Commission put forward to try and deal with the economic situation here during the coronavirus. If I may, just to add in to what Ariane has just said, by allowing a member state that can provide aid to its companies and that respects the framework as laid down, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be helping other countries. You have to get the whole value chain involved in the EU. For example, company in member state A will still be working with the companies in member B. So there's a positive indirect impact on other member states. This is what we've already said on various occasions by different members of the Commission, here in the press room as well. There is obviously a risk as to the cohesion of the single market. And we want to deal with that risk through a relaunch strategy. And that strategy has to be a cross-cutting approach throughout the EU. And as the President said in Parliament last week, we want to target those countries which have suffered most during this crisis. So I think that's the answer we can give you to your question. So I can see David, and Patricia, you have your hands up. I know you want to talk about something else, Patricia. So, David, competition, is it?
Oui, bonjour Eric. Question.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Competition question. A follow-up, actually, and then I've got a question which is on other topics. So my follow-up first. If I wind back to 2008 and another crisis, when the state aid rules for banks were suspended, but there were lots of exceptions and so forth, pretty much the same thing happened. Those countries which had budgetary room for manoeuvre, like Germany, set up protection systems for their banks on a national basis that were very strong. However, countries like Italy that didn't have such room to manoeuvre tried to go ahead as much as they could with what they could, and then there were problems further down the line. Isn't that the risk? And shouldn't you, or aren't you going to do anything about it? Germany is basically taking up 50% of the state aid package, basically compared to the rest of the EU. Basically, Germany is going to strengthen an already strong position vis-à-vis other countries. So what are you going to do? How can we deal with that if there are no rules or very few rules, or they've mostly been waived? Secondly, on Alitalia, have you got any updates? There's a 3 billion decree just been approved. More than 5% of the amount that the crisis is generating in Italy is now being placed on the Alitalia dossier. And that was a company that already was in trouble before COVID-19. Okay, I'll reply. On the first question, well, as I just said before, I can't really add a great deal to that. It's not that we waived the rules or that there aren't any rules. There's a temporary framework on state aid now. This has cross-cutting conditions applying to all member states. We do have conditions. They are more flexible, clearly, than the ones that would normally apply without the coronavirus, in other words. But we're not saying there are no rules. As was also said, the temporary framework can also help other member states that do not have the means to take cross-cutting measures for all businesses nationally, or other areas that can't receive state aid, and they're able to help other sectors. Obviously, some countries have more space to help the economy. Some countries have more room to maneuver. We've also said before, state aid are one of the options we've proposed. The temporary framework to is one way of dealing with this current situation. There are others, though, and my colleagues around have explained these other instruments, I think, better than I could. Can I go on with Alitalia? Okay, well, on Alitalia, I can't say anything specific about the business concerned itself. The Commission in general is very well aware of the difficult situation which the airline sector is facing currently as a result of the coronavirus. EU rules on state aid allow member states to support businesses that are hit by COVID-19 epidemics, including those in the aviation sector. Those rules do exist, and like with other member states, we're working with Italy to see what can be done to help that sector in line with EU rules. So that's what I would have to say. Thank you, Ariana. Are there any other questions on competition?